Dr. Richard Lumsden, former evolutionary professor, went on to become a committed creationist because of the scientific evidence. He even went on to debate evolutionists. Unfortunately, this champion of creation science died recently, but not without first leaving us his important conclusion that in light of the great advances of science in the 20th century, evolution is no longer tenable.
The evidence of science, the best in paleontology, the best in biochemistry, the best in genetics, and so on, is all compelling for creation. Creation theory does not rest on some purely metaphysical principles. It rests on the same science that evolution theory would rest on, except that the better explanation is creation, not naturalistic, materialistic, stochastic, or random evolutionary process.
But the fact of the matter is, it is Bible-believing creationists who gave us science as we know it today. A lot of people would be surprised to find out that the founders of almost every single branch of the sciences was a creationist. The greatest minds in science have always been those who understood the biblical account of life to be true and accurate. You don't believe me? Well, take a look for yourself, because the list we're about to display contains the names of the men who established the various disciplines of science that are practiced today. And every last one was a Bible-believing Christian. So I think you'd have to agree to say, as some naive people actually do today, that creationists and people who believe and trust in the Bible as the Word of God are somehow unscientific and uneducated is absurd, since it was the Bible-believing creationists who created science in the first place.
The truth is, Bible-believing scientists were the ones who laid the very foundations of science by making virtually all of the greatest discoveries in scientific history.
That's what they'd like you to think. If you were left to the conclusions drawn by evolutionists, you would think that evolution was almost single-handedly responsible for all moral, intellectual, and scientific good that exists in the world today. But let's look at the rest of the story, as radio host Paul Harvey would say.
Karl Marx, an atheist and the originator of communism, was delighted to find a scientific rationale in the theory of evolution, which he claimed gave validation to his new philosophy. Marx admired Darwin, and the two communicated and corresponded. In appreciation, Marx even attempted to dedicate his greatest atheistic work, Das Kapital, to Darwin.
There were communists of the day, and Karl Marx was one of these, who saw Darwin's theory as giving scientific credibility to what was previously merely a philosophy. The philosophy of socialism, the philosophy of communism, it all became scientific and credible with Darwin's theory.
In the Bible, Romans chapter 1 warns us about the natural consequences of rejecting God, the Creator. It results in man becoming involved in wickedness and moral corruption.
If there is a moral governor in the universe, then each person in this universe is responsible to that moral governor. The easiest thing in man's mind to do is just to dismiss the possibility of that moral governorship.
Adolf Hitler used the Darwinian thesis of natural selection, the survival of the fittest, to weed out who he considered to be the inferior strand of humanity. He brutally tortured and killed 12 million people, 6 million Jews and 6 million non-Jews. In effect, we are doing the same thing today with abortion, euthanasia, and infanticide, weeding out those whom we consider to be unwanted persons. Since 1973 in the USA alone, nearly 25 million unborn human beings were killed by abortion. That is one baby every 20 seconds. If we deny that man is created in the image and likeness of God, then we lose the dignity and purpose of life. If we agree with the evolutionary premise that we are no more than evolved animals, then humankind loses all moral perspectives.
Without world religions and governments advocating evolution's principles to prop up their own beliefs, secular humanism and communism would unravel at their very core. That's because each one is built on the premise that man is the captain of his own destiny, and that he doesn't need to answer to a world created by a creator God. Another impact this supposedly beneficial theory of evolution has had in recent times is the advancement of something Shirley MacLaine helped to make popular, the New Age movement. That's a complex network of all kinds of philosophies and political actions, but they all share the same basic goal of what they describe as global oneness, both physically and mystically. Once again, on the surface, anything that promotes unity seems to be a good thing, but it gets very bizarre very quickly. The New Age movement, using the same principles of evolution, just carries the principle out to its logical conclusion, which is to see the next phase of man's evolution to be the development into godhood. They see the human race as a transitional form between apes and God.
I think that man is evolving into a state of higher awareness, higher consciousness, higher vibration. And I think that the best representation that we have of man's movement in that direction is what's going on in the consciousness movement, New Age movement.
Evolution is going on all the time. Many people believe, and I believe, that the purpose of life is to grow, and that you grow as much as you can in each lifetime. And of course, we believe in reincarnation.
Evolution, whether it's biological, chemical, or spiritual, is man's way to explain away God and his creation and put man in the place where only God himself belongs, in control. Christians have been lulled asleep on this issue. Evolution has even gained ground within the church because so many are unaware of just how far-reaching and dangerous this philosophy is. Not only is God's character and truth at stake here, but the very foundation of morality. If we can remove God from the equation, we're accountable to no one, and we can become our own gods. If there is a moral governor in the universe, then each person in this universe is responsible to that moral governor and his rules. So the easiest thing in men's minds who are trying to do away with the rule over their lives is to just dismiss the possibility of moral governorship. In a phrase, to say there is no God.
The truth is, evolution has inspired brutal, atheistic governments because it ignores or minimizes God as creator. With God out of the picture, evolution has left many people hopelessly searching for the real meaning to their lives.
We started this program over here in the jury box. We presented a lot of compelling information, but there actually comes a time in some trials where the evidence in favor of one side is so strong, so overwhelming, that the attorneys with the ironclad case ask the judge for what I'm now going to ask you for, a summary judgment. A summary judgment means that the judge agrees that your case is so compelling and your opponent's case so weak that the case is thrown out for lack of evidence. I ask you now for your summary judgment on the case of evolution. I petition your own judgment, your own conscience. Throw out the case of evolution. Surely if ever a summary judgment was in order, it is this case. And for most of you, the information we looked at here is more than enough for you to render just such a verdict. But human nature being what it is, a few stubborn holdouts always remain. Some will try and argue that despite the overwhelming facts against Darwin's theory, the case is uncertain. But in the final analysis, this is not a case about convincing your intellect. No, God is very clear on that point. You see, God gave you and me a conscience. And then he gave us an entire universe that speaks of order and design and unimaginable complexity. And that speaks undeniably of a creator.
I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. I will give of the fountain of the water of life freely to him who thirsts. He who overcomes shall inherit all things, and I will be his God, and he shall be my son. Revelation chapter 21, verses 6 and 7.
Evolution is a lie, and the fact that you and I are created by and responsible to a creator God is an obvious fact. So really, now I'm talking to those holdouts who consider themselves to be scientific and intellectual. This is really not about convincing your intellect. It's about setting aside your pride and listening to your conscience. And it's mostly about bending your knee to the creator God of the universe. It's about submitting to and learning about God through the Bible that he gave to man to reveal himself. So don't let the evolutionist fool you. Deep, deep down, even in an evolutionist's heart, he knows all too well the truth that God created him and the universe. But his pride and his sin won't let him admit it to himself or you. Evolution is nothing more than an elaborate path that some men have devised to suppress the truth so they can run away from God.
Call unto me, and I will answer you, and show you great and mighty things which you do not know. Jeremiah chapter 33, verse 3. The heavens declare the glory of God. The skies proclaim the work of his hands. Day after day they pour forth speech. Night after night they display knowledge. There is no speech or language where their voice is not heard. Their voice goes out into all the earth, their words to the ends of the world. Psalm 19, verses 1 through 4.
Don't let men who are suppressing the truth by their wickedness rob you of the glory and blessing of knowing and living for and being blessed by the God who created you. I'm Janet Folger. May God bless you and keep you.